Good morning. This is Jeremy Sizemore with ASAP Talent Services. As many of you guys know, we are an SAP executive search firm and have been working in the SAP space for a couple of decades. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Ron Gilson to be joining us on our ASAP Executive Spotlight. And of course, Ron, for years and years, was the CIO at Johnsonville Sausage there in Wisconsin, a brand hopefully that many of our listeners will know and enjoy. And then also, Ron, after he left Johnsonville Sausage, is now the CIO for Organic Valley, another consumer brand product that hopefully many of you guys will know in the dairy space. And so Ron is based out of Wisconsin. Welcome this morning, Ron.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy, and good morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning to you. So Ron, if you can I'll open it up with just a kind of a general question. If you can just share a little bit about your career path and, kind of how you've come to be where you're at today, and what do you think is some of the magic sauce that you bring to the company cultures that you go and work with?
All right. Wow. Wide open. Yeah. So as you mentioned, Jeremy, I spent almost 30 years at Johnsonville. So, I'm a Wisconsin native, born and raised here, went to school in Wisconsin at UW-Oshkosh. Had a great internship experience. So, all those folks that are just are in school and are looking for their first roles, right? Internships was my entry to my first job, first permanent role in Oshkosh, and then great experience there. And the individual that hired me at Johnsonville, actually, or at that Oshkosh location, actually recruited me to go to Johnsonville back in 1991. So it was a great run at Johnsonville, right? Started out as an analyst programmer, supporting almost everything except the finance organization, right? So from manufacturing to supply chain to procurement. So it was a great experience, and had the opportunity to jump into the CIO role relatively early in my career. And I give all the credit and thanks to Ralph Stayer, the owner of Johnsonville, for giving me a shot when maybe I wasn't quite ready for it, right? And sometimes just jumping off the cliff and not knowing whether or not you have a parachute on your back or not is, you learn real quick. So it was a great culture. It was a great organization, a great company. And then, at some point in time, after 30 years, you start reflecting on what you want to achieve in your career, and looking long-term, what I wanted to achieve and where I wanted to go. I realized that I really just needed some new experiences. I needed to broaden my experience. I needed to get, 30 years with one culture, one company, one supply chain, your learning is a little limited there. So, that was really the reason I left Johnsonville. It was a great place. I got two boys that still work there in IT. It's still a great organization, great company, but it was really just an opportunity for me to spread my wings a bit and do something a little different.
Absolutely. What I love about your story too is, you were in the right place at the right time. You've really stayed at some of the companies that you've been with throughout your career for a good stay, and worked your way up, and were in the right place at the right time, and it paid off, and got that opportunity to become an internal promotion to CIO. And so many times people ask me about, how do I get my first break? How do I, get my first really big role? And I think sometimes it is about being in the right place at the right time and working your way up. And, sometimes people do make a move to get that first role, but so many times the people are internally promoted into their first VP role, into their first divisional CIO role, and then ultimately into their first global CIO role. So Ron,
just following up on that journey.
I know that a lot has been going on in the SAP space, and we see a lot of companies that are going from on-prem to cloud. We see some companies starting to look at SAP Rise and hosting, whether you do it through like Azure or AWS, or whether you look at the Rise solution where you're being hosted by SAP. It kind of brings me to the question, what do you as a CIO see as digital transformation? What does that word mean to you and your organization? And tell me a little bit about the story, if you can, about what's going on there at Organic Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot to unpack there. Let's start with, digital transformation, right? I love these conversations, right? And people, have a conversation on digital transformation as if it's kind of this new phenomenon that's kind of occurred over the last, 10 years or whatever. And I think about it, right? It's like, being in the industry this long, right? It's about, we've been digitally transforming our organizations for 40 years, right? It's just, you think about all the digital technologies, go back, EDI. EDI was a way to transform how we did business, right? And it provided
Right.
Some great benefits and really changed the way we did business. So, I think, digital transformation, I think really the critical thing, Jeremy, that we focus on here is making sure that the only digital transformation that's valuable is the digital transformation that is enabling some strategic goals and our objectives, right? So I think that's the number one challenge as we think about all of the opportunities that we have in technology, is to making sure, first and foremost, we're stepping back to understand what is strategically important to the organization, what are the things that we have to improve, or what are the goals or objectives we're shooting for, and then making sure that whatever we do from a transformation perspective is 100% aligned with achieving those goals and objectives, right? It's the old, never implement technology for technology's sake, right? Because there's a lot of shiny objects out there, and we can have a conversation about the cloud. And I think the one thing that this transition to cloud has done is it's created a lot of shiny objects. It's created a lot of distractions and a lot of opportunity for folks to whip out credit cards and just start implementing new solutions without maybe having the amount of planning or foresight into, is what I'm doing actually going to help drive long-term strategic goals and objectives. So that's another whole conversation that we can have there. But, I think as we talk about digital transformation, I think it all starts, it's really organizational. Every organization's in a different situation, right? So where you're starting from, where you're trying to get to, that's going to drive your transformation initiatives, right? And we were at two very different spots at Johnsonville. Johnsonville's transformation going back into the early 2000s around SAP was all about trying to enable growth for Johnsonville, both domestically and internationally, going from a very regional manufacturer of products to a global distributor of products, right? So strategically, that's what we were trying to achieve at Johnsonville, and that's why we went down, implemented SAP, and continued to implement SAP through the mid 2000s or 2010s. At Organic Valley, it's a very different starting point. We were a place at Organic Valley where we have a lot of obsolete technology. We have a very complex landscape that is not agile, creates some cybersecurity risk and all kinds of things. So our transformation is really more focused on, let's clean up the landscape, let's simplify the landscape, let's modernize the landscape so that we can be in a position where we can now start truly transforming the business on top of a modern platform, right? Because we're handcuffed today with a lot of the old legacy technology that just simply is not able to support where we need to go. So, at Organic Valley, you mentioned Rise. Yes, we did select to implement SAP Rise. Right. It just made sense for our organization, where we were going, and what we needed to do. So hopefully I answered your question, but it's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it was a great answer. And, to your point, sometimes in a certain decade, you start to hear technology phrases and buzzwords. And I think back to my career in the early Y2K era, 98 to 02, for example, and Y2K was on everyone's mind. And there was a lot of mainframe in the 80s and 90s. And you saw this big push to go to client server. And there was kind of an evolution where companies had huge IT teams supporting their homegrown apps. There was a lot of software development back in those early years, Visual Basic, Java, .NET, and in-house software development teams were huge. And then you kind of saw this migration of, no, let's go to, for our core business apps, let's go toward SAP and PeopleSoft and JD Edwards and Microsoft Dynamics and Oracle. And then there was a consolidation in the market of, mainly Oracle and SAP being the big boys for the large global companies. Of course, MS Dynamics is in there. And, every decade, as I think back to the late 90s, Y2K, into 2010, into 2020 and beyond, we're constantly evolving and replacing and modernizing our tech solutions. I think you nailed it with putting your business hat on first and foremost as an IT leader and saying, what is the business trying to achieve? And then through technology, how can we help them get there? Can we increase efficiencies? Can we improve our reporting? And in layman's terms, Ron, I always talk to, people that I know, they go, what does SAP do? What is ERP? And I'll try to just talk to the non-IT person and say, you remember when you're a kid? Depends on someone's age, I assume. But I remember we used to order, through the Sears catalog. And, I'm late 40s, but I can remember those days and how it took 7 to 10 days to get something, and you fast forward to today, you were talking about EDI, talking about debit card and credit card transactions online, and the ability for that customer to order something and it literally to be at the distribution center, for them to put that out to the customer within an hour. That has changed how quickly our world has been moving, how fast we can get something, and the business's opportunity to see that the inventory has replenished or reduced. Now we've got to replenish. They can look at their numbers internally as a business to know where they're at. And for all of the different areas of the business processes, whether it's financial or whether it's logistics or supply chain or purchasing or HR, for that to all be integrated in one solution, and we've come a long way, and nowadays we want to order something and we want it to be on our front porch, in a day or two with Amazon. And so I think that helps them to understand where we're going. Super exciting. Share with me, I know you've been a leader within the ASUG community, particularly there in the Midwest and Wisconsin, maybe nationally. Tell the audience a little bit about who and what ASUG is and why it could be so critical for them for our ongoing professional development.
Yeah. ASUG has been a wonderful organization. I first got, for those that maybe not aware of ASUG is the America's SAP Users Group, right? It's the, and they represent the community in both the United States and Canada. So 34 local chapters, I believe it's 34. There's a chapter in Wisconsin, Denver, most of the major cities and metropolitan areas have a local chapter. Really the mission around ASUG is around really three core areas: education, networking, and influence. And, and personally, I've benefited from all three of those. So my engagement with ASUG goes back to 2005, 2006. Started getting involved with ASUG really as Johnsonville was going through our deployment of SAP technology, looking for a way to learn from others, right? I always say that, there's no new problem at where you're working, right? The problem that you're facing has been solved by somebody else someplace, right? And it's a matter of trying to find those folks and network with them and learn from them rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. So I think that's really, the reason we got involved with ASUG was the education, the opportunity to network with others. And over time, as we started becoming a kind of a leading adopter or an early adopter, if you will, of some of the SAP technologies, as a small, I've been in small organizations, right? Less than $1 billion. Your voice with a company like SAP tends to be pretty small compared to the Pepsis and the GEs of the world.
The Fortune 50s, right?
So, as we were trying to adopt some of these new technologies, as we were trying to absorb some of these acquisitions that SAP was making at the time, right? Success factors and business objects and all these things, the opportunity to get a community of folks that were facing some of the same problems and bring all those voices together and have a single conversation with SAP from an influence perspective was wonderful. Um, as I
Yeah.
as I grew through, I was actually a board member with ASUG for 6 years, uh, and the opportunity there was to really develop relationships within SAP, not only here in North America, but over in Waldorf. So I spent, 2 years working with ASUG around the whole digital access and indirect licensing, right? But that was a lot of very candid, hard conversations with executive leadership at SAP on how their policies were impacting customers' adoption of their technologies, right? So,
Right.
so I think it's so lots of great opportunities with ASUG to get involved. You mentioned again the chapters. Um, Travel can be limited sometimes to get out to network or get to education events and those types of things. Well, chapters are just for a lot of folks, it's just a trip down the road. It's
Yeah, a
every
lunch
quarter.
and
There's
learn,
something.
or putting it on your monthly calendar, and you can just drive. You don't even have to get a hotel or a flight. Drive over, get some professional development. The networking is huge, and I think you echoed it earlier around like building your business case. And if you're early on a major decision at your company around, are we going to upgrade? Are we going to implement? Are we going to go from on-prem to cloud? Lessons learned and hearing how did that go for other companies, learn about that, what would they do differently, what were the pros, what were the cons. Learning
Yeah.
through others that are battle tested is going to help you to make better decisions today in whatever it is that you're doing. Obviously career development and those kinds of things, it's just huge. Is there a monthly or a quarterly or annual cost to be a member of ASUG if you're an employee at a company that runs SAP?
Yeah. So ASUG membership is at the organization level. So your organization, becomes a member of ASUG on an annual basis. It's dirt cheap. I mean, honest to God, it's probably the cheapest investment you'll make in networking and education for an organization. And it's once your company becomes a member, all the resources of ASUG are open to every member of the company. So yeah, I mean, if for bang for the buck, there's no better investment in networking and
Exactly. And I
education.
know a lot of companies are going to cover that for people if they want to be part of it. It's just a matter of talking to your leadership or HR. And a lot of times they cover that as training and professional development, and Sapphire, some of the people listening to this obviously may go to that too. That's the big event, and that's super expensive, and that does involve all that travel. And really that's the big once a year event, but this is that ongoing, training, building those relationships in your local community closer to where you're at. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, I'll wrap up with an interesting question. 2024, it's January. You and I are talking. We're coming right out of the holidays, and you're in a position to sometimes hire and grow your team as you guys evolve and go through your major initiatives. We're coming out of that post-pandemic world where a lot of people worked from home, and then now there's kind of a lot of companies have this hybrid model, but there's also this push to get people back into the office, and it depends on the company. It depends on the role. This isn't just an easy, kind of way to answer a question like this, but how do you see maybe the market evolving, and what are the challenges in terms of hiring, and what are some of the things that you guys try to do to help attract talent in this ever evolving world that we're in?
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had the silver bullet here, or the crystal ball, right? I think to your point, um, attracting talent, keeping talent is dramatically different today than it was, 5 years ago. From a hybrid perspective, it's interesting to see the trends where things are going. I think we all realize that, we're never going back to a 5-day work day or work week, but we're probably not going to be 100% remote either, right? I think there's something in between. So as we try and figure out, what does hybrid mean? And every organization is going to have a little different definition of what hybrid is, and that, I too often, a lot of times we have these conversations with folks about coming back to the office, right? Everybody, and not everybody. There's a group of folks that just love being in the office, right? I mean, it's just like that. They love to go to the office every day, and then you got this larger group of folks that's saying, I just love being at home. I can get more done. I got heads down. I can get my work done, and I can be. And when you're asking me to come into the office, you just want to button a seat, and you want to make sure. And I think, my conversation with folks is that's not what it's about, right? The button the seat is not about. It's not about being able to look over your shoulder. I'm a huge believer in this spontaneity and serendipity, right? And it's just, you lose that when you're in these remote and scattered across, because you're back-to-back meetings, and there's no water cooler time, there's no lunch time, there's no, you're just hopping from meeting to meeting, and so we lose this opportunity to be spontaneous and be able, these random spontaneous interactions create these points of data that all of a sudden these 2 points of data come together, and all of a sudden you got this aha idea. And I just have not seen those happen in this hybrid remote environment. And I think that's the biggest benefit of being back in the office, is to generate that serendipity for the organization. So, at Organic Valley, we're in a unique situation. We are probably in one of the most beautiful areas of the entire country. We are in what they call the driftless area. It's hills and woods and farmland, and it's probably the most peaceful, relaxing, beautiful areas of the country you'll ever find. But it's rural, right? I mean, we are 4 hours from Minneapolis, 4 hours from Chicago, right? I mean, over 2 hours to Madison. So, it's really about creating. It's trying to find the right people that want that lifestyle. It's because work is more than just work. Work is about lifestyle and supporting who you are as an individual, what you're looking for as a family, or an individual. If you're looking for something that you love, the outdoors, you love being in a relaxed, peaceful environment, a beautiful part of the country, then that's great, because now Organic Valley has got we're a mission-based organization, right? So if you're really focused on making a difference in the world, saving small family farms, providing good, healthy, natural products to consumers, couple that then with a culture that's focused on work-life balance and focused on personal growth and development, and that, I mean, it just all comes together as really being a world-class place to work. But it's,
you summed that up well, Ron. I think quality of life is important, and understanding who you are as a company. Who are we? What is our culture? And then therefore, when we go out and do hiring, with the thought of retention being an important part of hiring, we've got to find the right puzzle pieces. And, over the years, we've recruited in a huge city like a Chicago or Atlanta or Dallas, and we've found those urban, types. Sometimes we have searches that are very high travel consulting, and they're high dollar, like mercenary type roles. And no one puzzle piece is wrong or right, but it will fit your need or your company's, open puzzle piece. It'll fit better. And so the full-time hires in the corporate world or in a more rural market, way back in the day, we helped build Maytag's SAP team before they were acquired by Whirlpool. That was Des Moines, Iowa. And we did a lot with Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And these mid markets or smaller markets or more rural markets, it's a different type of search, because you're looking for someone that's going to be really happy in this role a year later, 2 years later, that it's a good fit. So you really described that extremely well. And at different places in people's careers, sometimes they start out and they need to make a certain income for their family. And sometimes they need career development and they really want to climb the ladder fast. But there's other times in life where they're ready to slow down a little bit, and or that's just the culture of that person's DNA, or that person and their spouse and their kids, and they want that lower travel maybe. They want that a little bit slower pace of life. So Organic Valley, absolutely beautiful area of western Wisconsin. Anyone that's ever heard of the Wisconsin Dells, this is the place where people go to vacation. from Chicago, from Minneapolis, from Green Bay and Milwaukee. Sometimes this is the heart of the travel country, and this is absolutely beautiful up there. So Ron, really appreciate your time today, and sprinkling in some of those nuggets around career development and growth, understanding what's going on in the market. And I think there was some awesome best practices discussed around building your business case and how to expand your network through like an ASUG, for example, to really help you as a leader in IT or SAP. And so this was a great 2024, January first quarter, video podcast, Ron, and I really appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeremy. And for all those folks out on LinkedIn, I'm a big on community and networking. So yeah, reach out and let's have a conversation. Keep it going. So,
Ron, you've
thanks,
really
Jeremy.
always, for me, have been a CIO that puts some really good content out there in your social media, but you're also a pay it forward, helpful IT executive, and you're responsive and you're just out there doing good things for the community, and which shows by what you've done for ASUG as well. You've really given back to the community from a standpoint of the IT and SAP community and the corporate community. So we really appreciate all that you've done throughout your career, Ron. Suppliers like myself, people that are, end up being third party, providers of services. Some people are really great to work with, and you certainly are. So I appreciate that, Ron. Thanks again, and hope that you just have an absolutely great 2024. And for those of you that are watching, some of the topics that we were talking about might be really interesting. Definitely feel free to comment on the thread, and it'll be an active thread and an active discussion, and that's what we love about this kind of platform. So again, really appreciate your time, Ron, and happy 2024 to everyone.
All right, thanks, Jeremy.